What's good, YouTube? Quinn Wade Basketball Analysis coming to y'all with a quick video. Today we want to talk about PG. I talked about Russell Westbrook about 2 weeks ago. Today I want to cover PG as a free agent. Should he stay in OKC? What teams he should most likely go to? And is he really worth the max? A guy, which we're going to talk about now. A guy that's definitely shown that he can be amazing in the playoffs. He struggled, obviously, in that last game against OKC, where he didn't shoot the ball particularly well in the closeout game. Even though Russell had a couple bad games too, you know, they're going to keep Russell because they can't get no other player, and they're going to need the best out of Paul George. He lost in the first round. He averaged 24 points, 40% from the field, 36 from three, 86 from the free throw line. He gave them 6 rebounds, 2.7 assists, and 1 steal a game. The numbers look a little bigger than they actually are. 24 points a game. You will take that, but he shot below 40%. I mean, below 45%, which is bad. But he had a couple good playoff series before in his career showing that he can play make, he can handle the ball, he can create shots for other people while still getting his own shot. I feel like OKC, he always had to shoot the spot up three. My biggest complaint about Paul George's game is the fact that he lives by the jump shot and died by the jump shot. For a guy to be that long, that tall, that lanky and the athletic ability that he has, he very rarely gets to the rim. And when he does, he's not the best finisher. He doesn't really explode like LeBron and get the dunks, get the layups like Russell. Even though Russell not the best finisher either, you would expect him to have a bit of a better mid-range game and under, considering how long and lanky he is, because he can just jump and throw the ball in the basket like Kawhi Leonard used to do because he's just so tall. And he doesn't. And another thing is he shoots the three. He shoots a lot of threes, but if his three ball is not falling, he's just going to continue to shoot them, which is not a problem if you start making them. But you have to have other ways to score consistently. I know it's hard to say Quinn, he scored 24 points a game. At the end of the day, if he can do that, that means we all know that Paul George is one of the best players in the league. I don't think nobody is saying that he's not. Paul George is one of the best players in this league. That's why a team like the Lakers, a team like the Sixers, a team like the Thunder wants to keep him because they know the value that he brings defensively. He can disrupt, get you easy buckets because of transition. He's a guy that can knock down the three ball. He's a guy that can. He's an enhanced version of a 3 and D guy. He's better than your average 3 and D guy because he's a better playmaker and a better scorer. And he's just better at a lot of other things. He worked on his game more than they did. They became a system player. He became an all around player. But he's basically at this point with the Thunder, he was basically a 3 and D guy. He can get high from the 3 point line, knock down a couple mid range jumpers off screens, and create a shot from time to time. But I definitely think he still has value in this league. Giving him the max, we don't know because some people saying that he's a two, some people saying he's the third option. I'm a PG guy. I just don't like the fact that if his jump shot not falling, he doesn't do that much, especially for this Thunder team because they don't really need him to handle the ball that much because they do have Russ. I feel like if he will leave, I think he should leave OKC because he just don't. Everybody say he's the perfect fit around Russ, a guy that can play D and shoot the three and give him some ball handling from time to time. But Paul George, he just wasn't himself. And I put him on my All NBA third team, and people started criticizing it to a certain extent because he had a bad couple weeks at the end of the season, but he was able to fix it the last 5 games. But I just feel like the guy can play, the guy can shoot, he can take over a game, he can get hot, he can keep teammates involved. I just feel like the way, like Carmelo said, the way he was utilized in OKC kind of put a damper on his career because it looks like he can't play with other star players because you look at Indy and you see them go to the Eastern Conference Finals a couple times and even go to a Game 7 with a chance to go to the NBA Finals. And Paul George was the best player on that team, and he did play well with Danny Granger, but he was more of a 3 and D guy at that point, a guy that can knock down shots and also play great defense, but he didn't have the offensive load that he would have later in his Indiana days. So I don't know if him and Russ can coexist because Russ is ball dominant and he needs the ball to score. He doesn't really shoot threes off the dribble. He doesn't really cut. He doesn't really play amazing, outstanding defense either. So I think if Paul George wants to be happy, he needs a place where he can be himself while still getting touches, while still being able to create for others. So he will need the ball in his hand a little bit more than what people think. Being a third option will be better for him if he was getting older, which he is older now, but I don't necessarily think that Paul George wants to get the max and become a third option that get limited touches and doesn't have that much of an impact on games consistently, especially if he's trying to go there and win. A team like the Rockets, if they do a sign and trade, would be very ideal because he's a solid upgrade over Trevor Ariza. Trevor Ariza is a 3 and D guy, but Paul George defense is better and he can, like I said, obviously he can do more. And Houston do need that third ball handler on the wing. You got Chris Paul, you got James Harden. If James Harden shots not falling, you can go to Chris Paul. If his shots not falling, you can just play make with Paul George and let him get the ball. So, I can see that working because they run a lot of spot up threes for him, and he's going to get a lot of open shots and dump offs if he continue to move without the basketball. James Harden and Chris Paul can really do him favors, and the fact that they can actually shoot the three consistently, unlike Russ, makes him a better on the ball dribbler because he has people that can shoot, unlike Brewer and Robertson. So those guys can defend and those guys are long and lanky, but they're not that good offensively. That's something you definitely can say that's different about a team like the Rockets having Eric Gordon, having James Harden and Chris Paul, guys that can handle the ball and score, but also space out the floor, making it harder to guard Paul George because you don't want to stay at home with him. You want to stay at home with him, but you have to help off them because they're so dominant. Plus, you have the pick and roll. You want to stop Capella. You don't want to give up the mid range, and you definitely don't want to give up that step back three from Chris Paul or James Harden. But if you do, you will have to pick your poison. Either give Capella a dunk, give Paul George a wide open three, or let him create for somebody else like Harden or Chris Paul, or you give up a tough shot. Or you have to give up something. That's why I say pick your poison. But at the end of the day, that would be the ideal scenario for Paul George if he wants to be a third option. Playing for a championship contender, just happen to be. They don't really need Paul George. They've proven it this year. They won 60 games. They have a chance to go to the Western Conference Finals. But he will be an upgrade over Ariza. Obviously, they will have to get rid of a lot of players to make this trade work, which means they lose some of their depth, to add a elite wing and a great 3-point shooter and playmaker for his position in Paul George. Definitely something for them to consider. Remember, they was looking for Carmelo a couple years ago. They was looking for Chris Bosh. They were looking for that third guy to pair with James Harden. Obviously, they was able to get Chris Paul, who has been a great fit that a lot of people thought wouldn't work. A lot of people thought it'd take some time getting used to each other. And one thing you got to realize, Chris Paul got hurt early in that season, and they still gelled and they still play well together, and they have a chance to compete and win the championship. But having that guy that can score on Durant, score on LeBron, score on Kawhi Leonard while still being able to guard them at that position, and he doesn't have to use as much energy offensively because the Rockets are so potent, offensively scoring the basketball. They don't even need him to do that. But the fact that he can still do it and you have him as another option and another weapon, and he can use a lot more energy on the defensive end, make that third string a lot better for him, and he's still getting paid and he has a chance to win a championship and still being in the West. But I think you definitely still got to remember that Paul George did average 21.9 points a game as a second option. He averaged 24 a game, even though he didn't shoot the ball particularly well. He averaged 24 points a game as a second option, and he basically won them game one of that series because he got so hot in that game. So you definitely got to consider that. Teams like Philadelphia, he'll be an upgrade over Robert Covington. They can you know, they would have to pay Sarge, they would have to pay Fultz. So they can have that mode where it's like, let's go all in now while we have all these guys on rookie contracts and we have Joel Embiid locked up. Let's go all in now with this roster and see what we can achieve before we have to pay Sarge, before we have to pay Markelle, before we have to pay Ben Simmons. Let's trade some of these draft picks. Let's trade some of this youth to try to win a championship now. Obviously, LeBron James is significantly older than Paul George, and he has become a better scorer and a better three-point shooter, but he still needs the ball a lot to be LeBron. Paul George doesn't need that as much as a third option. If you could say the second, because Ben Simmons is not really a scorer, he's more of a playmaker, but he can score if he really wanted to, and he's been proving that the last 2 months. But he still prefer to keep people involved, and that helps Paul George game, a guy that's always looking for you, and he knows the plays ahead of the play, and he can keep you getting easy basket, which is a confidence builder. And like I said in game one, you can see a guy like Paul George getting hot because of those open shots, and he started feeling himself, and next thing you know, it's a blowout. So they will be one of the most potent and best offensive teams in the league if they get a guy like Paul George. But that was the best case scenario as the third option. Obviously, going to the Lakers, he will be the best player on that roster, but we really don't know what Rob Pelinka going to do with him. If they get Paul George, they got to have that second move, and that's something I can't talk about because I don't know what it's going to be. And same with the OKC Thunder. You have to give a lot of credit to Sam Presti because he has been one of the best GMs in the league and presidents of operation, because he was able to get something for Serge that was well worth the value in Victor Oladipo, which turned into Paul George. He was able to get Enes Kanter for Reggie Jackson, which was good because it helped him get Carmelo Anthony, another guy that we thought would fit better at that time the trade happened, but he really didn't. But we didn't see it coming until we seen them play, and they never could get on the same page with each other. So those are things you definitely got to consider. How great these GMs are, and if they do have the ability to get Paul George, you know it's another move in the making. Just because you know if you get a guy with Paul George, whether you have a star or you have two stars, you know at the end of the day, you're on pace to be a championship contender if you stay healthy and you can build up a bench in a short period of time. We done seen the Rockets clear out their whole bench for Chris Paul. Then they get Joe Johnson. Then they get Gerald Green. So it's a lot of talent now. I told you guys, Summer League, you can evaluate a lot of talent. G League, you can evaluate a lot of talent. And you still got the players overseas that's playing, and you can always bring them in before the playoffs start, giving you more talent. But let me know what you guys think. Check out my website, analysisplayground.com. Link will be in the description in the comment section below. Check out my Facebook page, analysisplayground.com. Link will be in the description in the comment section below. Do you think he overachieved in Indy? Do you think he underachieved in OKC? Do you think he's a role player? Do you think he's a complimentary player? Do you think he can be the best player on a championship team? Or do you think Paul George is best as the second or third option? Or you just think he's an enhanced version of a 3-and-D player, a guy that can do what they do, but just more? Or do you think he's just a streaky scorer that can play defense? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Quinn Wade Basketball Analysis, I'm gone. And if you have any video suggestions, let me know, because I do this for me, but I also do it for you guys. So if you want to see or want to know my opinion or my analysis on anything, let me know, and I can get into a video and give it right to you.